Hey folks, welcome back. So this is finally the long-awaited video that we started 2 years ago about what exactly happens if you dry fire gas blowbacks. And if you remember, we were kind of discussing about how, after a few hundred rounds even, the dry fire blowbacks for illustrated gas blowers will cause exponential increases in damage and stress that it would actually break your gun within about 100 or so rounds. And so we wanted to put that theory to the test, and I'm sorry it's taken so long, but it was a lot of videotape. I had to condense a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of time just dry firing. So before we start though, right, let's be clear here. This is a very small sample size. We did 2 guns. One was a CO2 gas blowback system, the P90, in this picture in this video right here, and the other is later down the road. We did it with a Umarex HK USP gas blowback using green gas. Now, the short answer is if it were to break in, say, like 50 rounds, right, all it really proves is that, like, hey, it might be an issue from the dry fire, or it could have been that we had a lemon and it broke anyway. It would have broken anyway. So it's really hard to definitively prove anything if it breaks early. But if it doesn't break early and we keep firing in the way it does fire and it performs well, that just kind of helps. Again, it's a small sample size, but it helps kind of just prove the myth more strongly that, hey, dry firing doesn't necessarily exponentially decrease your gun. So, because it's a long video, let's just put a little summary there, and if you're interested, you can listen to and watch the rest of the video. The short answer is, does dry firing damage your gun? And the answer is yes, whether you dry fire or you don't dry fire. We all know that that causes stress from the gun. But what we found in these videos was that dry firing does not exponentially decrease the effects of your gun, at least to the extent that where it's going to break in like about 50 to 100 shots. That's not true, at least from our sample size here. And so we'll go into the issues or the video timeline right now. But we started with the P90 right here, and we just did a bunch of dry fires. We went through 2,000 rounds of dry fire, just me just pulling that trigger, just day and night, day and night. I didn't do it in one day, so my fingers got tired. But just cycling through thousands or 2,000 rounds. And the only thing that really happened actually was that the pin in the front of the guns came loose, and you just kind of had to push it back in. It was like a roller pin that you had to push, and it fell out. But it didn't even fall; it just started slipping out, and you kind of just nail it back in there. But other than that, did not fail. The trigger still works. Everything still fires. Gas seal is totally fine. If I were to put in a new magazine and a new CO2 cartridge, it would just work just as fine. Slide did not crack. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, it got to the point where it really showed that nothing was really happening to this gun right now. That we started doing torture tests with this gun actually. Start putting it into the freezer, then firing it after pulling it out of the freezer. That kind of made the gun a little bit more sluggish. And then but nothing really dramatic. Then I dipped it in water and then put it in the freezer again to let it freeze this time. That got a little bit more trouble, and we can watch the videos of that a little bit later. That's actually kind of funny. For the most part, nothing really mad happened really. And then to the point that then we actually start shooting at the gun just to see if it will damage. And this thing is a tank. So I really don't think that this dry firing with the system really did much damage to it. We do know that dry firing does increase stress to the gun, though. That is true. And the reason we did this is that when you fire, say, a gas blowback, right, normally there's some variations, obviously, but if you don't let the gun rest to warm up and you keep firing at a reasonable rate, what happens is that each round is going to be at a similar FPS or lower FPS, right? And if you fire your last round, you'll notice that, and it's kind of that borderline FPS that's kind of low, it's enough to shoot the round out of the barrel, but not enough to cycle the slide back completely and lock it to the rear. But if you pull the trigger again really quickly, it hasn't, and if the chamber's dry, you're pulling it back, and the slide will be able to cycle completely and lock back. That's because there's more pressure when there isn't a round in the chamber. So that's a true statement. That is, something I found out that is true. But does that actually cause damage to the gun? Not so much. I think what happens is that what we've known, at least with the P90 right here, is that it does cause a little bit extra stress on the gun, and it does cause it to, some of the parts will get loosened a little bit more frequently. But that's not a major problem. You can just tighten things that get loose or anything like that. Nothing that would cause a dramatic damage to your gun that will break it within 50 to 100 shot. Again, this was 2,000 rounds, followed by an extensive torture test to the gun. So yes, it does cause stress to the gun and wear and tear, but not nearly to the extent that a lot of folks really claim it to be, though. Doesn't look like it's firing. Oh, let's wipe this off. Condensate. Let's see what happens if you dip it in water. Okay, because sometimes this, I guess this might happen. So what happens if we dip it in water? Let's get all the air bubbles out. There's a fully loaded magazine in there. There's no CO2 or anything like that. And let's say we forgot it outside, and let's put it to the ultimate test. So now let's put this guy into the freezer, and we'll see how it fares. All right. We'll check back with this thing in a day or so. All right. So now we've just taken this out of the freezer. Remember, we dipped this in water, dunked it a little bit, or drained a little bit of the water, and then put it in the freezer for about 24 hours. Ice cold, right? Magazine was still full. Let's see if we can at least get the magazine out. Magazine is stuck in there. Yeah, it's frozen shut, so I can't get this. There we go. Ooh, ice cold in there. Alright, so now we can hopefully pry this part open. Put in a new CO2 cartridge. Thing performs. Okay. This is the CO2 cartridge was at room temperature, but everything else is frozen. Oh, I can't even pull the trigger because it's frozen. Oh, that was a... Oh, I don't want to get water in this chronograph. That messed it up. Alright, so this is... Looks like the trigger did not reset. I don't know if it's needs to... There's some ice blocking it or anything like that. Might have to... Whoa! Look at that. I have no idea why it's doing that. That is strange. I think what's happening is that something is, maybe the ice is keeping the gun, like the trigger down. That's why there's not a lot of resistance right now. And so when you pull the slide back, I'm not sure how these mechanisms work, but for some reason when you cycle it, it keeps wanting to fire. It still does it. That is weird. That is really weird. I don't know what's going on. No rounds are coming out though. Magazine's still full. The only rounds that are coming out are the ones that I'm pulling out of the gun. Oh, this is making a mess. Pretty cool though, huh? But pretty much useless. Oh, it's starting to come out now. I can feel the resistance of the gun on the gun, so I think the ice, or whatever chunk that was blocking it, is now working. So let's see if it fires then. There we go. So it was a temporary block of ice that was, keeping the trigger down somehow. So if I cycle the slide, it shouldn't go do that full auto thing anymore. Good. So now we should be able to fire this gun and see how much. Yeah, there we go. 267. Let's get some more light on this actually. Yeah, there we go. All right, so here at this point, we're pretty tired of dry firing, so I started shooting at it actually. This gun's at this point just laughing at me. I'm trying to like break it at this point, and I just can't do it. I've thrown it around, tossed it on the floor, the cement a few times. I'm shooting at it. And it really just passes, you know. There's not a whole lot of damage. I know we'll show the close-up videos afterwards of this, but you know, for the most part, we've moved beyond the dry firing stages and just doing other things with it. So in short, well, at least for this gun, the P99, and I might have said P90 earlier, this P99, for the most part, holds up pretty well. I think this gun proves, at least this model here, proves that dry firing doesn't take a significant toll on the you know, the lifespan of this gun, as you can see in this video. Neither the shooting at it, throwing at it, freezing it, or otherwise abusing this gun really makes any huge difference either. So initially this is a dry fire test, but it, you know, proves out to be a really good torture test too. Now, when we get into the results of the HK USP, things get a little bit murkier, but I think it still supports the overall theme that we've concluded here. So here we see all the damages, the dents and the divots, or the scrapes and all that stuff from the shooting test when we physically shot at it, not from other things. And then you can see there minor cracks in the lower polymer frame, but other than that, not a whole lot of damage. Obviously it's scuffed up and seen better days, but it's still held up. That aluminum slide is very strong. Alright, let's see here. Okay, this has been in here for about 3 months in the freezer. Oh boy, look at that. Has a loaded magazine in there with a CO2 cartridge. Let's see if it still shoots. Alright, 161. So it's still fired, although very weak. So, alright, it's been about, I think, over a year now that it's in here. Let's take a look at this. Now, again, the magazine's been in there. Same with the CO2 tank. Look at how the frost is starting to show up on it, right? Boy, it's cold. Let me see if it still shoots. Now, it's not going to be really strong, obviously, because it's under a lot of, you know, or the pressure's gone, but let's see if it at least still held its gas, and if the shape of the O-ring that's supposed to hold it is still holding its seal. I'll be really impressed if it does work, which I'm not surprised that it does work, but I am impressed if it does. So let's shoot it. Oh, nice, and even locks back. Alright, let's see, are there any rounds in the magazine? Oops. Oh, that's why there's no rounds in the magazine. But either way, held its gas. I am impressed about this. So it's really a testament to how quality these products can get. And that maybe it doesn't really matter if you have a gas tank, or if you leave the CO2 in there for too long, at least for this brand. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, now this is where things get a little bit weird. You could make an argument that with the P99, you know, it wasn't truly operating like a traditional gas blowback, you know, and maybe that's why nothing really happened to that gun, you know. So, and I kind of agree, you know, it's not, you know, it looks a little bit different, and the mechanism's a little bit different. So why don't I try this one, you know? I want to see, will those same results apply to the HK USP right here? And this is a gas blowback ran by Green Gas, and again, I didn't go through 2,000 rounds, but I went through about 300 rounds, you know, because again, that's still more than the 50 to 100 rounds that people say will break in. And this is where the results get a little bit different. Now, keep in mind that this gun, and you can watch my review on this gun on a different video, but this gun already had problems coming into the video, right? The slide lock just doesn't work, okay? You have to manually push it up if you wanted to get it locked back. And then the screws on the inside would get a little loose, and I think that's what caused a lot of problems in this video. So all these dead triggers that you're seeing right now, those are a result of the screws being loose. At least that's what I suspected. So after I tightened up those screws again, things got a lot better, and then nothing really happened, and it continued to fire. You know, every now and then you'll see that the slide will lock back, but that's just really me holding up the slide lock just to make sure that, you know, if it were to work, would it still cycle back? And the answer is, you know, yes in those situations. But, you know, things like cracked barrels or broken nozzles, those things, you know, cracked slides, those things didn't really happen like I kind of suspected, because a lot of people say, you know, these guns will break, but what exactly happens? And really, again, the same principles applies. As you dry fire, you know, it does increase stress on the gun, and this increased stress does cause parts to come loose more often. And so all those dead triggers you saw initially was because of an internal screw that caused it to come loose. There were 3 internal screws. So I just kind of tightened them up, used thread lock to make sure they're nice and tight. They're the reversible kind, so in case I have to fix it again. But, you know, that helped out a little bit. One part that I did notice that kind of damaged it a little bit, and I think it's going to come up in a little second here. I can't remember if it was this video or not, but watch the extractor. It starts coming loose in it, and I didn't even realize that that started happening until I rewatched the footage again, and I noticed that the spring that actually was attached to the extractor, and that actually holds in or actually allows the nozzle to reciprocate when you fire it. Maybe it's not in this video right here. I'll point it out when it comes up. But the point being, though, is that the gun, for the most part, does experience a lot more stress to it, and there's a lot more vibrations throughout the gun that does cause some loosening of the parts. But that's not to say that, you know, it would break, though. Again, dry firing doesn't help the gun, obviously. But it's just it's really not dramatically different than from just shooting the gun. And I think, you know, this is me just trying to put in more rounds here to see if it really works or not, or still works, you know, just to make sure that the loading nozzle hasn't broken or anything like that. But yeah, so I think this kind of helps. Again, it's a very small sample size, but I think it helps prove the point that it's not really, you know, the end of the world, you know, like when you, especially if, you know, I mean, no one's going to be sitting here like, oh, perfect, this video's out, now I can just sit there and dry fire my guns all day. No, I don't think that's really the case. I think that's really just means that, you know, if you do dry fire it, you're not expecting it to dramatically, you know, it's not going to, like, you know, the nozzle's going to rupture and the barrel's going to explode the next time you shoot, or, you know, any of that stuff. It's just, you know, yeah, you know, just make sure you're more mindful. You don't do it too often, because you might need to put a little more maintenance in the gun, and certain parts might get more loose and you need to tighten it down, like the P99, or in this case, watch the, there you go, there goes the ejector spring right there, if you just saw that. But that's kind of really the nutshell, I think, of what we saw in this video. And so, again, I think it's a small sample size, but I think it's really interesting to see what happens. And after all this time, I think this is the best result that I can interpret. Now, everyone can interpret it differently. You know, it's possible that, you know, different guns are built differently, right? And the quality of certain guns can be a huge factor in it. If you had used a gun that was cheaper, maybe the extra stress caused a certain part to come loose, and, you know, that could be lead to a catastrophic failure of the gun. That's a different story. That's entirely possible too. But that's just not how it played out in these two guns right here. So I hope this was some, you know, food for thought. I'll let you all decide on your own opinions of what to make of these two results of the test here, and go from there. But otherwise, I think this was kind of a fun, you know, experiment to see what happens to this, you know, and it, in a way, I think it kind of suggest that people who say that dry firing, breaks your gun within like 50 or 100 rounds, I think they're kind of overly exaggerating, or they could have gotten a lemon, So it comes back to this lemon theory concept, Was it the lemon theory, or was it truly the case? And I think the results of this test kind of suggests is that it leans more towards the lemon theory. That's my hunch on that one. So if y'all have different interpretations of the results of these tests, or maybe ideas that this test might have been flawed, I'm sure there are plenty of criticism that you could of the results of these tests. But again, I think it's kind of interesting. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of the video. Again, I probably put a little bit more of the HK USP footage in this tape, because you got a little bit more dramatic results and you can see things captured on tape, whereas the P99, nothing really happened. It was kind of boring. It kind of just passed with flying colors. And no, I'm not going to shoot up at this gun and throw this in the freezer or anything like that. This one's a little bit more expensive. Dry firing was enough for the for me.
Oh, wow. That's the first time it locked down on its own. But as you can see, it barely caught on. See? There's a lot more room for the slide to catch on, but it caught on that last time right there. So maybe all that vibration and the motion from dry firing shook it up to... but back to normal. Still doesn't lock back.
So the rest of this video is going to be like, what, 7 or 6 minutes or whatever of just me shooting. Again, nothing really dramatic happens. There's just more, maybe a couple of scenes where there's dead triggers involved, or you can tell how many rounds it fires before, well, it still locks back. I did forget about one thing though. Even though I do commend this gun for being able to lock the slide back after about 40 or 50 shots, even beyond that, I did forget that the fact that when there aren't any rounds in the chamber and you are firing, there is more pressure, so that will increase the likelihood that it will lock the slide back, at least when you're pushing up on the slide lock, because remember that is broken in this gun. So that's not to say that if you have 50 rounds fired with BBs that are chambered, that will necessarily cause the slide to lock back, because remember, there is more pressure when the chamber is empty. So I kind of take back my excitement a little bit over there. But other than that, I do think that it's kind of it does work very well and it's still very gas efficient though. So I hope everyone enjoys this content. At the very end right there, I'm sure no one can see the video because it's kind of small, but that was just me firing at a distant shed from about 80 feet away, and the rounds are still striking, and nothing's broken, so it's still going well. So again, I think it's the lemon theory from this test, but that's all I've got for today. Hope you all enjoy the rest of the video, but there's really nothing more else to add. I just left it in there for a full completeness sake, just in case anyone wanted to see the performance of the gun and maybe some of the frost that develops on the CO2 or the green gas mag. But that's it. Thanks a lot, folks. See y'all next time.
And it still locks back. So, that's actually pretty impressive in terms of the gas efficiency. So let's, keep going. Let's give credit where credit's due. This is about the 16th, so it should be relatively stable at this point. Okay, so we fired about 250 rounds so far, give or take. So what we're going to do now is fire continue the dry fire and finish it off at round 300 total of dry fire rounds. And then once we get to 300, we will reassess and just start firing how it should be firing. I think at this point it's good enough to to determine whether this myth is true or not. This is 35 shots. Let's see if it still locks back. Nice, still does. .41. So very consistent from what we can tell here. It seems that the efficiency of the gas, like I said, if only the dang trigger pack didn't, have problems causing the slide lock to not move up, this thing could fire up to 40 to 50 rounds and still be able to consistently lock the slide back. Yet for some reason, because of the trigger issues, it's causing that slide lock to not go up, and it's a shame that we're having this issue. Does look like the the extractor here is holding up okay. I don't see any major issues. Let's just finish it off right now. Magazine is cold. I can definitely feel it through the hand grip right here. Let's keep going. Still locking back. Yep, still locking back. That's pretty good. All right. Ooh. Running low, that's why. Okay. Look at that magazine. There's starting to be some ice forming at the bottom. So we ran through about 100 dry fire rounds in the span, a little frost actually, sorry. My hands are getting pretty cold with this. But that's about 100 rounds of dry fire in the span of about, what, 5 minutes right there. So pretty good. I will say that. I think this is a good test. We were running this test for another reason, but I think this also helps support a use review of the gun and helps add more data points to the overall utility of this USP. So hope that was helpful.